Okay, so 2 Bears and 2 Bucks walk into a bar. And, well, you get your top performers from Sunday's Week 6 fantasy slate. Bears quarterback Caleb Williams coming off a 4-touchdown performance in his win over the Jaguars, and 2 of those tutties going to his tight end Cole Kmet. And Bucks running back Shawn Tucker and receiver Chris Godwin accounting for 4 of Tampa Bay's touchdowns in their win over the Saints. And we now bring in 2-time Fantasy Analyst of the Year, Jamey Eisenberg, as there was plenty of offense to go around in Week 6, including in the first game of the day out in London as rookie quarterback Caleb Williams. He must be an early riser because he put on a show across the pond in the Bears' win over the Jags. Williams now catching up to Jayden Daniels, who has been another standout rookie as a fantasy quarterback. But, Jamey, I assume things are trending upwards for the young signal callers.
Yeah, no doubt, Kiana. You know, you're looking at the way that this young man has performed, and it's back-to-back weeks, and he's starting to look comfortable. And granted, the Jaguars' defense is bad. The Panthers' defense a week ago is bad. Unfortunately, though, the bye is coming at a bad time for him because he's starting to get hot. And the nice thing that you're seeing is it's not just him relying on one guy or relying on his legs or just, you know, taking advantage of some bad defenses. You're seeing it all come together. The offensive line's starting to play better. The run game's playing better. And today it was Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen. Last week it was DJ Moore. You know Romo Dunze is going to get going. And we said coming into the season, it's probably hard to find a rookie quarterback that stepped into better weapons than what Caleb Williams has. So while Jayden Daniels has gotten off to an amazing start, and he's probably the rookie of the year still, Caleb Williams has closed the gap. And for fantasy managers, you now have 2 rookie quarterbacks, and maybe more coming with the way Bo Nix has played, with the way Drake May looked today. We may be looking at a very impressive rookie class for fantasy managers, but the guys at the top, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels are getting the job done, and Williams was just fantastic today against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Things trended up for the young rookie signal callers, but meanwhile, Jamey, on the ground, it wasn't Rachaad White for the Bucks who missed Sunday's game with a foot injury. Instead, the job was handed off to Shawn Tucker, who helped lead Tampa Bay's ground game to their 3rd most rushing yards in a single game in franchise history. Now, just considering his 136-yard performance, along with 4th-round rookie Bucky Irving adding 81 on the ground, does this spell trouble for White in his role looking forward?
Oh, 100%. You know, and while Tucker was great, a lot of his production came in garbage time when the lead was just out of control for Tampa Bay. Most of the heavy lifting during the game was by Bucky Irving. Now, they were splitting the touches, so it's not like Tucker's going to be irrelevant. But you have to wonder what it's going to look like for Tampa Bay when White is healthy. And so they may give him as much time as he needs to get that foot injury right, unless you're him and looking at it and saying, I need to get back on the field quickly before these 2 young guys run away with my job. But for Bucky Irving, this was something that was building. You know, you've seen him outperform Rachaad White in almost every game so far this season on the ground. And the thought was maybe, okay, Irving's going to be the running downs guy and White would be the passing downs guy. So we may have a 3-headed backfield, which will be bad for fantasy managers. But Bucky Irving should be 100% roster. Tucker will be one of the more popular waiver wire pickups. You should not drop Rachaad White yet, but this could just be a situation where he may fall to the back of the line. I don't think that'll be the case. I still think he'll be the 2nd running back on the depth chart behind Irving. But Irving now has a chance to be the best running back in Tampa Bay rest of the season.
So don't drop him just yet, but also I know we're getting a little ahead of the ball because I know we're going to talk about it, especially on Monday, but looking at that waiver wire could be a name that you can pick up. But, Jamey, as for another player stepping up due to injury, no Nico Collins, no problem for Houston, as Tank Dell was able to take advantage of Collins' absence, catching 7 of 9 targets, 57 yards, and a touchdown in the win over the Patriots. But just how do you envision his production these next several weeks, especially with Collins being on the shelf?
Yeah, he needed this game. You know, I mean, he's had a rough start. He had a rib injury, which caused him to miss the game a couple weeks ago. But there was a lot of expectations for Tank Dell because of how he performed in his rookie campaign. And so Stephon Diggs is added. Nico Collins gets off to a hot start. Clearly, there was going to be somebody that was going to get left out on a week-to-week basis, and it's been Dell just a little bit too consistently. So he gets the 9 targets, which I think is important because that led the team. And so now you're heading into a Week 7 game against the Green Bay Packers, which is probably going to be one of the more high-scoring affairs based on sure how Vegas will, you know, put the spread there. But I think this is an opportunity for him to build off that because C.J. Stroud loves Tank Dell. Fantasy managers love Tank Dell, which is why nobody was giving up on him. So this was just a sign, I think, of things to come. So 3 more games without Nico Collins. He'll be in the borderline number 2, number 3 receiver range. Remember, only 2 teams on a bye in Week 7. But this was a big step in the right direction, and hopefully these at least next 3 weeks, he can become a consistent producer, and then we'll see what happens moving forward when Nico Collins hopefully is ready to return.
All right. Well, a couple of other wideouts in Indy had a nice outing on Sunday, including Michael Pittman finding the pay dirt, as well as Josh Downs. And he also led the team in yards in their eventual win over the Titans. But now I want to ask you, Jamey, is now the time to sell high on these 2 receivers?
So it's a risky proposition because at some point they're going to turn the team back over to Anthony Richardson, and just unfortunately he does not connect with his receivers the same way that Joe Flacco does. Flacco's a veteran. He's going to be a more accurate quarterback. Richardson is still learning the position. He's going to be more of an athletic quarterback, use his legs, and not connect with the receivers the same way, at least based on what we saw. So Pittman's first 3 games were miserable. Downs didn't really get a chance to play with Richardson a lot because he came back in week 3, and then Richardson suffers the injury in week 4. But you're seeing just very solid production. And if you can convince a fantasy manager to take these guys off your hands, now's the time to sell high. Pittman, again, sample size with Richardson, not great, but he's got a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 games, and the game against Pittsburgh was also pretty fantastic. Downs has just been very special the last 3 weeks. I'm hopeful that they can still continue to produce a high level, but I'm just not going to buy it. So if I can turn these guys into maybe another running back, maybe another receiver, someone who's struggling, this is the time to sell high if you can find someone to take them based on Pittman's name, based on Downs' production the last couple of weeks.
All right. Well, Jamey, on the other end, have we finally seen the awakening of tight ends? We finally got to see some of those big names live up to their expectations this week, including we saw George Kittle, and we talked about Cole Kmet finding the end zone twice. Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews also with the score, and Evan Ingram and Trey McBride both having 96-plus yard outings. But who can we count on looking ahead? Because I'm one of those people, I fall into the trap. I see them do well, and I jump on it.
I'm hoping we count on all these guys. And look, Travis Kelce got going before his bye week also, dealing with the injury to Rashee Rice. So you got to feel comfortable about him. I think it's just a case-by-case basis. Look, nobody was ever going to bench George Kittle. Trey McBride, you have now the concussion for Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll see if he's going to miss week 7. But this is obviously a step in the right direction for McBride. It's just been a little bit unlucky. And he did have the concussion a couple weeks ago that caused him to miss a game. So I think we'll get back on the same page with Kyler Murray moving forward. Mark Andrews is starting to get going. The last 2 weeks he's been more involved. Isaiah Likely is still going to be a problem. The run game is so good in Baltimore, it's going to be a problem, but this was definitely a positive sign for him. Laporta had the big play. I think he's going to be more involved as we continue to move on for the Detroit Lions. The one that I think you look at and say, okay, is this sustainable, is Cole Kmet, because he's had 2 big games so far this season. One came when there was no Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze for the Bears. This came against Jacksonville. Now they're heading into their bye week. So is he a sell-high candidate? I think you could probably see if somebody needs him, but you're not going to be able to trade him very much at this point because of the bye week. And then Evan Ingram, look, the Jaguars are probably headed for a coaching change at some point. Who knows how much that will impact the team moving forward. But another guy that if you picked up somebody else while he was out for the last 3 weeks, if you feel comfortable with that tight end, you may be trying to trade him. So I think everybody's sort of in the must-start category based on either what their expectations were coming into the season. Ingram, Andrews, the other guys. Kmet is somebody that you should consider a number 1 tight end moving forward. But really the bottom line is tight end was so bad to start the season. To see these guys finally produce and produce at the level that we know they're capable of, hopefully, again, it's a sign of things to come.
It certainly boded well for at least me in my fantasy matchup this week. But another one for you, Jamey, because you mentioned Trey McBride and also what it could possibly mean for Marvin Harrison Jr., who dealt with that concussion in this game. Just looking at if this happens to linger, how does that change the way you might look at this Cardinals offense, at least going in the week 7?
I think you look at it, first off, it's not an easy matchup against the Chargers next week. And so Kyler Murray's kind of been a borderline starting fantasy quarterback. He had 2 really good games and 4 kind of disappointing ones going into week 7. So he's not a slam dunk must start quarterback. It just depends on who's either on the waiver wire or who's on your bench at this point. McBride becomes an absolute stud because we saw last year before they had Harrison on the team, he was just one of the more targeted tight ends from basically week 6 on once they got rid of Zach Ertz. So there's a lot to love about McBride's situation. Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, once he eventually gets a little bit more worked in, those guys will get a little bit of a boost. But hopefully this is one of those scenarios where Harrison clears the concussion protocol and can get back out there because he was having a solid rookie campaign. But we've seen, in tonight's game, for example, Malik Neighbors missing his 2nd consecutive game for concussion. So concussions could be tricky, but hopefully Harrison will be okay. But McBride benefits the most if Harrison's not there.
Absolutely. Some good insight there and good things to look forward to, at least as we approach week 7. Jamey, as always, we appreciate the insight. And if you want more where that came from, make sure you check out the Fantasy Football Today podcast, where he's joined by Adam Azer, Heath Cummings, and Dave Richard, giving all the tools you need to dominate your league. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.